Hello, my name is Lowell, pronouns he, him, and this is a recording of a session talk that we're doing here on our Shared Hearth Open Gaming Weekend. This is talking white whales and inadvisable ideas. And so this is about the games we've wanted to get to the table, but for whatever reason, we haven't been able to. That's the big thing of white whales. And then inadvisable ideas are probably a subset of that, is my imagining. These are games that have a great hook or a concept, something you want that appeals to you, but actually doing it, actually implementing these games is beyond your skill set, made difficult by the medium, outside the possibilities of conventional mechanics. There are all kinds of reasons why these things won't work. And I have gone back to the list on the Discord, inspired by a thread that we had there talking about these. And so I will mention a few that were put in the list just to show you kind of the inadvisable ideas in white whales. Kieran Gillen mentioned mashing up Trophy and Bluebeard's Bride to make a mashup called Trophy Bride. Ian mentioned using Wild Sea to do One Piece. Shane would like to rewrite the Trail of Cthulhu campaign Eternal Lies so it's about Christian mythology rather than the mythos. And then, of course, there are many things on the list that are basically, hey, I want to use Passiones to do X, Y, or Z. That seemed to be the big theme that we return to. So let me talk about the structure for what we're going to do today. I'm going to present one or two of my ideas, and then I want to pass it around so that everybody has a chance to suggest or to discuss one. Because this is in a little part a bit of a workshop, I do want to set a couple of ground rules. If, when you present, you would like some suggestions for actually how to do the game, like how to actually get to the table, system alternatives, ways to play it, please say so. Please say so. And if somebody doesn't do that, then the kind of feedback that we're giving is that's a really cool idea, or here's a riff on that idea, that kind of thing. Imagine it sort of in terms of what we're asking for in terms of content and feedback. It is that. So I'm going to start with one that I'm not entirely sure how to do it, but it super appeals to me in the most niche way possible. Uh, so how many of you know what Honkai Star Rail is? Does anybody here know what that is? Okay.
It's like Genshin Impact, but
It
it's
is like it's an impact.
space.
It is a space fantasy gotcha game. And I really mean heavy on the gotcha that is on PlayStation and mobile and all that stuff. And you get your husbandos and waifus and you fight in space China and space steampunk and space Greece. And basically the premise is a group of heroes. They have this literal train, it is a rail, that travel around to these planets fixing problems. And I love it, and I have spent too much money on it. But it is the gameplay is fun for me and so on. But I kind of love the story because every character that looks like they're funny actually has a horrible, tragic backstory, and you find that out through play. And I keep thinking, again, so niche. I don't know who would want to play this, but taking Aegon and using Aegon to do that sort of travel from planet to planet because they've got these paths that are like divine forces and things that you follow. They could be the gods. I like it appeals to me. I like Aegon. I don't love Aegon. So that's the other half of that equation there. I don't know, but it is one that it is an idea I cannot get out of my head. So
From memory, a quick look at the game, there was lots of slow mos when they did like a power move. There'd be like a slow mo close up on their face, like a John Woo movie. Would you
yes,
do that in the
I
game
don't know
as well?
how you would do the ultimates to do that, except like because those are the big we've got 15 seconds of animation when they use their ultimate, which you're using repeatedly in a fight. I don't know how, but I kind of love the thought of that. So that's my place I'm starting from. I've got ones that are perhaps more possible, more realistic, or there are some limitations to conventions. So let me begin then throwing it out to the table. You can raise your hand or mark your hand in the thing or whatnot. Does anyone have any one of these white whales, a game that you wanted to get to the table, or a concept that you wanted to play out that you want to talk about, that you want to bring to us to present? Donna, let's start with you.
I guess I have three levels maybe to talk about. You know, one of these inadvisable ideas that I'm actively considering right now, even if it's impossible or inadvisable. That is playing the Great Pendragon campaign using Free from the Yoke, because obviously I don't want to play Pendragon again. And I think the inadvisability of this, but the thing that draws me to it is the fact of like not everyone plays knights. You play, whatever gamut of noble or, a powerful character in this setting. So like, what do we do with quests? What do we do with like, given that I know how players usually act, Arthur is not even going to show up, or he's going to be killed in a back alleyway before he even sees a sword in the stone. Who knows? So yeah, that's something I'm actively considering.
Really?
I'm going to offer it to my home group and see if they bite, and if not, I guess I will have to run it here. Whether that would be like a quarterly per era, a quarterly for Uther, and then a quarterly in the Anarchy, and a quarterly, and so on,
I love
until I
Free from
run
the
it.
Yoke, so I'm just going to throw that out there. It is one of my favorite games.
So, I mean, this is one that, if people have ideas for how, or, hey, it's a concept that'll work, people will dive in. I don't know how I'm really thinking about it.
Donna, Great Pendragon is also one of my would love to do, but isn't the main obstacle, and I love that this is being recorded, isn't the main obstacle that it's not good? Like just
Well, I guess, right, the Great Pendragon campaign has these like potted little histories and
yeah.
events and snippets of stuff that I think, as written, you're supposed to hew very closely to. And the other thing I think is that in the Great Pendragon campaign, these things are going to happen in 20 years' time, regardless of whether your players have, completely killed that guy already 5 times or whatever. I don't expect that I would run it like that. It would be a framework or like a pool of stuff that I might just dip into. But yeah, I kind of agree with your observation, Thomas. Um, uh,
No, I like that because I do think like it's already a very loose set of guidelines, right? They'll be like, here's 5 lines, go and go and improvise the whole adventure based on it because we have hundreds of 5 lines to give you. So we can't give you all the details. We're just going to give you 5 lines. So like, yeah, if you're already going to be doing so much, why not? Why not do even more? That's what I always say.
I mean, are you suggesting I'm going to bite off more than I can chew? I don't know.
No, no, I'm suggesting because I have complete faith in you that you will somehow pull this off, and then you'll be yet another person being like, I had such a great time with the Great Pendragon campaign, and everyone else will, like me, will just be suckered into it and will fail dismally when attempting.
You will, as Lowell might say, die mad.
Yes. I, one of the things I
Um,
love about Free from the Yoke, there are lots of little tech in it that when I did a L5R version of Free from the Yoke that Mike played in that I really quite liked. But there's building like what the ruler wants, building the projects that they can have. I think they're like that would be a super fun thing to do. What are the things that our king is going to ask us to do as knights, and what do we get if we succeed at that, and what do we get if we fail? I think that could be really fun. You said you had another couple ones. Do you want to talk about those?
yeah, maybe less in passing. The kind of second tier is, the book that is taunting me from the shelf, saying you can't run me, which is Burning Empires. Sorry, so I guess Burning Wheel, right, is this quite complex, crunchy game. And in Burning Empires,
Divisive.
it's
For those of you at home, he's leaving out the fact that Burning Wheel is one of the most divisive RPGs out there. Go on.
yeah, and it's melded with this intense lore, this kind of campaign framework about an alien invasion and all the things you're doing to subvert it. And it's, I don't know, gothic in its complexity, let me say. I'm even afraid to go back and read it. That's how intimidating it is to me. Yeah, and I'm afraid to pick it off the shelf again because it'll taunt me as I get to page 100 or something. You can't do this. You'll never succeed. Uh, I regret nothing.
Okay.
Maybe buying it, but I'll be fine.
Well, we'll come back and see if you have some more stuff. 'Cause I know we all have a ton of ideas. Who would like to go next? Anyone wanna throw out there?
Well, I can.
Blake, we'll throw to you.
I can. It's more of a one that failed. I tried to go for my white whale. For years, I loved playing and reading the lore of Mage the Ascension, and I'm talking decades. And then I ran it, and it just didn't work. It's like I pretty much ran it like the Dresden Files, so I did like a 3-star thing instead of a 5-star thing of what the game can really be. And it's only medium crunch. It's not as bad as people think, but there's a huge amount of lore. And in the average campaign, you're only going to use like 20% of it. But part of it is to do the 5-star full thing that it deserves. You really need to be skilled in like philosophy and debating, which I'm not, and the game doesn't teach you. So I'm like, I can't do this game, and that's not being hard on myself. I'm not ready now or anytime soon to do that. And I love the Lord, I'd love to do the game if it was revised, but I had to sail my ship away. It's like that beast is too big for me to fight. I couldn't do it, and it's a bit sad. But you got to go. Well, there are some other games that I can do a 5-star version of, but that wasn't it. So sometimes your white whales aren't meant to be defeated once you identify the beast when you're close enough, I guess.
I love it, and I do think there are a certain kinds of white whale that is. I love the lore. I love reading it. I love the idea of it, and you're like, oh, I want to run that, and then you go, okay, how the f do I get that to the table? How do I actually implement that? Now, I think that and Mage is so cool to read. Yeah, I love that. Other people's thoughts, Mike.
Yeah, I put this in the channel a few days ago, but I really, for some reason, I really want to run a multi-table grand campaign of some description where I have multiple tables running not one after the other, but in parallel, and where they can impact each other. And they don't even need to be playing the same game. I really like the idea of them not playing the same game and potentially
Oh, wow.
influencing each other. Anything where players at each table are working for like one faction amongst many, I think would be really good for this. So the examples that spring to mind for me are Court of Blades or Beam Saber, both Forged in the Dark games. And the biggest challenge, the thing that really stops me from doing it, other than not having an infinite amount of time to put games up on the calendar and trying to run multiple games in parallel, to run multiple quarterlies at the same time, basically, is how to manage tables influencing each other, especially when they two tables go after the same objective at the same time. So narratively, those characters would need to interact in some way, shape, or form. I believe Critical Role is doing something like this for their current season 4, where they've got 3 different tables that are playing at 3 kind of different games that are influencing each other. Has anybody done anything like that? And if so, what was your experience?
So, this is how I met my wife. Yeah. I was
Flexing on.
okay, I know. So I was managing a game room that was above a game store, and I was assistant manager for the store itself. And so I was running stuff to get people to get boots on the ground and people in. And I ran 3 fantasy GURPS campaigns in the same setting in parallel, with them starting out at very different places. And while they didn't influence directly, there were a lot of people would pick up news about the other ones. They would find out about stuff. And like I was seeding all of the plots together. And because no one was like directly, I mean, players were talking to one another, but I wasn't like hard and fast saying this is the day. I could play with the timeline. I think that's the most important thing is you don't give a concrete day. You just kind of like move those around. That came to a head like at about the two-thirds point of the campaign where all three of the groups went to one place. And I literally had all three groups. So we had like 18 people come and we brought food and literally the leaders of the different groups would split off and they talked to one another and they shared information and some big events happened and it kind of like, okay, these are the things we need to do to solve the problem and heading out in different directions. That some of the groups rearranged where some of the players swapped between groups at that point. It was a lot of work. It was, I think we played that for a couple years and it was good, but I shied away from the influencing thing. And I think that's so crucial to what you're suggesting. I don't know exactly how you would manage that. But yeah, Sherry had been up at the game room playing Magic and painting miniatures, and I asked her into the game, and that's how I got to sitting and talking with her and actually interacting with her. So there you go. GM dating strategies. There you go.
Mike, the first thought that came to mind was Mass of Nyarlathotep. But like one of the factions is the Golden Dawn or a bunch of cultists, and then there's two of them are different investigator groups. But that's brave. That's dial it up to 11 bravery option.
So I have played in some, I don't remember what we called them, but I played some Pen to Good Society games or like Good Society games that were like that, or shared tables, I think was what we called them. But this is with a caveat that Good Society is much easier. It is easier, I think, to have like multiple tables of and then come together because Good Society by default is a game about people and their relationships to each other. And so it's not like going to have the things that you do that affect plot are not going to directly impact another group goal the same way that say Beam Saber would, right? So I guess that is a thing, but I think it could be very interesting if it was like a political game. And then you have those things. But yeah, how we did it was we had like small groups. So in the share tables, we usually just had two. And then it would be two groups of I think it was four, but you can also do like three. And then so we would play on the same day, but in our separate tables, which meant that it was easier to schedule for the day when all of our groups would come together to have like a big one. And then we would have characters like relate to each other in the other table, and then they can, because Good Society is a game that has epistolary as a mechanic where you write letters to each other. That was how you could then write to each other and then influence plot that way without it being super disruptive, if that makes sense. Because also like when you're going to write, like epistolary is a very good way of like being like, oh, what do you think about this plot thread? While you're like, oh, like I've been feeling ill and I hear that you might want to visit. And so that is a like kind of like a permission, and then the other table and then the other players, they can like discuss it or whatever, and then they can write back. So that's one thing. But yeah, in terms of what you're thinking, I do feel like it would make more sense to have them start a bit further away, especially not going for the same goals. Like I don't see how that can be resolved in the same timeline. But I think like around the same area and then having those things, the impacts of what they're chasing, I can see it working with Beam Saber, especially since they're just it's so expansive, right? Like they're different factions and there are so many different crews.
I really like the idea of the epistolary mechanics, and I could envisage It sprung to my mind that you could build like a collection of mystery games where the clues, some of the clues for each other's mysteries are in the other games. And so they need to write to each other in order to be able to solve their own mysteries. Would be interesting to run.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Other people's white whales, inadvisable ideas. Something you've wanted to get to the table that you haven't been able to.
Stuff that's been mentioned already is stuff that I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about both Pendragon Campaign and Masks of Nyarlathotep, and both of them because I don't think both of them because I think they will struggle to live up to that accumulated reputation that they have, right? Like, it's not that they're bad. I think that's me playing more than anything else. But the fact that you cannot, I can't imagine that that the reputation kind of holds out in a way that you know especially something like the Great Pendragon Campaign, which is so linear, right? And it's structurally there is a question of like what you're going to have fun with. And Master of Nyarlathotep again, uh, very very similarly, like conceptually, like a kind of pulpy campaign, a lot of like weird like racism like in some of it, so I don't, but at the same time, like I am so drawn to the idea of having like a shared uh touchstone, right, like with people, because these are such big big landmark games to or adventures. Having played them gives you this kind of common language that you can potentially like talk to people about, which in the indie RPG world you never get, right? Like, oh, you played like this game that like 12 other people have played, and you're like, this was great, and they're like, that's awesome, I'm never gonna play it. So I am thinking about how to play these, and I think it would be fun to. I think they're both games that you have to find the fun in. Like all adventure modules, I think they have to be edited, like Donna said. So I am thinking about both of those and how I would want to like engage with them. I probably want to engage with them in a way that doesn't take 2 years to do. So that's a big part of it as well. Just like constraining that scope down. So that's I'm very actively thinking about it for next year. Yeah.
Is it something they need to be broken up? For example, Master of Nyarlathotep could be
Yeah.
Bump in the Dark, then Monster of the Week, then Delta Green, and you have a time jump of 5 to 10 years in between each, but the same characters going through it. So you can use multiple indie games to take on this massive campaign sort of thing. I could be completely off base here, but I'm just
No,
thinking.
no, that's really
the
interesting.
balls.
But I will say like my experience with adventures is like if you want to enjoy the adventure, you have to kind of de-emphasize system a little bit. Like you want to put the adventure first. So you want to play a system that doesn't necessarily need all the stuff that we love in like indie games, right? You don't need ways to bring in fiction and et cetera, et cetera. So if I was running Bump in the Dark, for example, I would just do that, and I would just run the whole thing like in that, like, or Monster of the Week, or any of them. I don't think the system is the big thing. I was thinking about Apocalypse Keys actually, because I think playing a high-powered character would cut short the runtime of the adventure for one thing.
I think the indie equivalent to Great Pendragon Campaign is Alice is Missing. Like there's one that
Uh,
has a strong, clear structure. It's a varied thing, but of course it's done in one session.
nice.
So I
Yeah.
think that might be the equivalent.
Or 40 sessions if you use it to regenerate a white whale-esque campaign.
That's right. That's right.
Donna
Yeah.
just name dropping like his adventures. He's like, hey guys, by the way.
So, sometimes you catch a white whale inadvertently, right?
I don't like Arthurian fantasy very much,
Yeah.
but the equivalent for that Great Pendragon campaign is there's that Middle Earth module, the Darkening of
Oh,
Mirkwood,
yeah.
which again has a pretty clear end point that's already set in stone, but there's something appealing to me about that it has that same resonance. I do kind of love that.
Yeah, I would love to play Darkening of Mirkwood as well. Like it's up there. Eternal Lies. Did you run that, Lowell? I believe you did.
No, I have read it a couple of times, and I had a conversation with Shane about it at one
Uh,
point. It's
yeah.
the greatest module that I don't think I would ever run. It has a twist at the end, and if you decide not to use the twist, then the game doesn't kind of pay off, and I do not like the twist.
Yeah, imagine like building up to that twist for 100 sessions. Like that's a lot of pressure. And it is
100%.
that kind of game, yeah.
Another big campaign that's fancy is the Enemy Within campaign for Warhammer, which I've run bits and pieces of. That's a classic, huge, long, sprawling thing that has a lot of people who love it and has a lot of different takes on it. Agatha?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't want to interrupt
Oh no, I'm
this
just babbling.
conversation. Oh, okay. That's why I raised my hand. But okay. My white whale. One of my white whales is I. It's not. I don't think it's not achievable. It's just kind of intimidating for me. Is that I've been staring at the courtly version of Hearts of Oblivion, and I'm like, I want to run a longer. Let's not be overly ambitious. I want to run a longer campaign of it than I usually do, which right up to this point, my max has been 12 sessions, but I want to run something that feels. I want to run a courtly Hearts of Oblivion that is like I really feel like factions are at work and like have players engage with it because I feel like that is the thing that really intrigues me about politics is like and because Hearts of Oblivion is not like a party based game, right? So then they can all be obviously what am I doing? I'm gonna Lul's right here. But like right, so like they can all be tied to these different factions and then want to do things and it feels like it would work out, but I'm just like I think sometimes when I run games, it feels shallow to me where I'm like I'm just reacting on the spot, but like I don't have like a good understanding of the motivations behind the scenes. And I know that there are tools that kind of help you track faction things in the background, but I'm kind of just like not sure how to go about it to have the kind of depth that I think would be interesting as the person running it, while also not having it then take too much away from the experience of like a Hearts of Oblivion game, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I'll say two structural things there that I think are interesting. When I've done the longer campaigns, like I did for Godbound and things like that, I actually broke those up into quarterlies. And we did
Okay.
like three quarterlies. And then what you're able to do is kind of aim yourself to a like end of a first book of a trilogy, end of a second
Mhm.
book of a trilogy. And then like maybe you take up the next 12 sessions takes up immediately from that, or maybe you do a time lapse. It gives you kind of a nice structure to silo things in, but allows you to build. And then you can give the players a chance to go regroup and, okay, what has happened in the time lapse, that kind of thing. That's one thing I could imagine there because I love your idea. Other tool, I don't know if this would work. I don't know if it would work, but I've come to really love what Star Trek Adventures does in that you've got your main characters, they are the big cast for the game. But if a couple of the cast like beam down to the planet, the other players have a very quick way to take up a secondary character. Very quick build, secondary, very simple, and they can play them out in that, and it builds up NPCs. It builds up NPCs for their faction, for like you're able to do that, and then people can fall in love with those characters too, both in game and out of game. And I really love that. Like, and they can die, and it can be shocking. We had that in the Star Trek Adventures game a couple weeks ago, where Mike's secondary science officer got killed And it was shocking to everyone because that kind of hadn't been a threat there. But I do love secondary characters. And if you could figure out a way to do them that would be really quick and really fun, like maybe two stats, an entanglement, and a move, that could be really interesting, I think.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love that idea of I love ooh, GMless. No. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could just roll like a tr like trait and motivation, like two traits and then motivation. Like they don't necessarily even need stats if they're
Hmm.
just
Yeah,
hmm.
yeah. When they roll with something they're good at, they roll this, and they or emote. There are a lot of ways to do it, but I think you do it real simple. Take 5 minutes to make them up, but they have to go and find a picture. That's the most important thing, so we know what they
Hmm.
look like.
I love that
Um,
because I never look for pictures.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Uh, oh, that's so cool. That's a great suggestion.
Other thoughts? Other what else? I'm going to come to some people who haven't talked yet. Andish, can I point to you?
Yeah. Uh, this is more of a of an idea that I could probably I could make this game work. I'm just not sure if there are people who would be interested in it. That's more like I'd have to find players for it, and that's doing a game about, and maybe this would just be a one shot. I'm not sure, but doing a game about like some kind of out fighting supernatural things, that sort of thing, but you're not playing the mission. You're just playing the after action stuff. You're writing up your reports. You're trying to cover your ass for the things that went wrong. You're trying to explain away things, trying to maybe keep some things under wraps because some people can't know about things, and trying to shift blame between the characters so that you don't get into too much trouble. Maybe that means someone else gets into a lot of trouble. And that's kind of because I've spent almost 20 years working for the government.
Mhm.
So, there's you pick up some of that sort of thing. And that's it. It's not particular for the government. It's all big organizations have the same thing. It's like office politics, but making it at least a little bit fun by having like the contrast with a supernatural element sort of thing.
I put it in the chat, but I love the idea of doing a game that ends up being very Rashomon,
Hmm, hmm.
where everyone is convinced about their particular
Yeah.
version of the story.
Yeah, and I think that's kind what I've become stuck on, that I don't like I said, I don't want a game to be about the mission, but then you have to have some way of generating at least a rough common understanding of what happened.
You could take that story beats thing from Mythomorphosis, where you have a set of beats.
Ooh.
This is what we start to build as our understanding of what the
Hmm.
how the mission worked in these story beats. And then people are like, no, actually, this is what happened in this beat. This was what I saw, kind of
Oh yeah,
thing.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not sure if there's anyone who would be interested in
Oh,
playing
people would
that.
love that.
So
That's so great. That's a great idea. I love metafiction. I love it. So that is very much, yeah, a kind of adversarial writer's room. Thank you, Aaron. That's great.
I did drop in the chat a quick mention. There's a game on itch called Mission Accomplished, which is about super spies writing their
Ooh.
after action report, and
Oh, cool.
it is exactly this. It's finger pointing, credit stealing, unfounded accusations. It is after the mission is completed. It is trying to figure out what actually happened and what you can get away with saying actually happened. Uh,
The
Cool.
blame
I
game, I
haven't
think,
played
is the
it. I
most
haven't got it
important
to the table,
phase.
but it's there. Yeah.
Awesome.
I need to check that out.
Yeah. Stephen?
So I've had I'm looking things up as people are talking about, like, I've never heard of Mission Accomplished. That sounds great. And so one of my white whales that I keep coming back to was actually a convention game that I played in that was pretty poor. And I'm a big fan of Pulp. And this convention game was based around the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but set in modern times. And the system that they chose for the game just didn't work. But I keep thinking back on that game, and that's the game that I use as an example all the time. And getting pulp to work in story games can be very difficult. There was a PBTA game that came out called Thrilling Adventures
Mhm.
for a while, but I haven't gotten a chance to play it. I think it's pretty bare bones from what I've looked through. Any other suggestions about how to play pulpy adventures in a story game? Another thought that I'd had was Primetime Adventures,
Mhm.
because you kind of go through the TV program of that.
Yeah, that's a really good. I like that where it really leans into the tropes. I mean, if you wanted to do real conventional pulp, of course, Fate, leans into that. But I think if you want something that has really good tools for supporting that, that's a really interesting question.
One example, so there's a bunch of different pulpy games out there, like Savage Worlds or Hollow Earth Expeditions. And they have another number of modules that you could convert back into that same kind of setting. Yeah, yeah, you want that character development that you see in like Indiana Jones or something like that, but you also want that fast action, which is a hard mix to get.
I will say that I think one of the more interesting modern takes on pulp is Achtung Cthulhu from Modiphius. I think that it is a surprisingly good game. It's 2D20. It still has kind of the action dice, but it's pretty lean. And it has a lot of really interesting stuff. It leans into magic and super science and kicking Nazis in the face. And I think that it's really good. And, if it comes out in a, bundle of holding at some point, I really recommend picking that up.
So there's a lot of games that can mimic the action. What seems to be missing is the character development that you get between players that's really difficult to get in that kind of system. It's almost like I want a bolt on of downtime from like a Blades in the Dark kind of game or something like
Mhm.
that.
That's a really good point. I
Lol,
like
you
that.
ran a playtest game that I was a part of that I feel managed to do that for a game that is no longer going to happen. I don't know what we're allowed to talk about.
The Tomb Raider, formerly Tomb Raider
Yes.
game is great for pulp stuff and has really amazing tools for downtime and building up stuff. When the final version of that comes out, I would highly recommend going to it.
So it's
I,
still coming out?
they are, as I know, working on it in another without that particular IP attached to it. Basically, I think that's what we know
Okay.
is it is coming out. They are in talks. I loved it. Like and not just because Ray wrote it. Like I really liked that game. It did a bunch of stuff that I've stolen for other things when I've run stuff at the table. So I think it does like a dungeon crawl as good as anything I've ever played. So,
Nice. I'll keep
and
an eye out
yeah,
for that.
yeah.
Do they have a name?
I don't think they have a name yet.
Okay.
No, that I
Okay.
think that's probably part of the like figuring out how to make it as iconic is a real challenge.
So I have a list of other white whales, but a lot of them are like, I want a designer to, finish some of the stuff that they've worked on. Like, have you played Always Never Now by Will Heinmarch? March? It's an old game.
Hmm.
I like it a lot. I'd like to see uh at some point I think they were working on a sequel and I'd like to see that. And yeah,
It's Will Hindmarch, so I don't think you're going to get that sequel. So,
exactly. And there was a Open Hearth game that we played at some point that I think it was like Working Stiffs, where it was like The Office mixed with zombie horror, where we went
oh
out
yeah,
and you were temps that were hired to go out and plug holes in the fence from the zombies, and then you came back and you went through, oh, somebody ate all the donuts,
yeah.
and that was a great game. But yeah,
Yeah, Rich, I think, was working on that with someone. I think that is my recollection, or Rich was playtesting it for someone, but yeah, I haven't heard anything about that.
so those are some of my White Whales games that I've played that were fantastic. That I'm like, oh, that should be out in the world more.
Hmm.
So.
Absolutely. Aaron, anything you want to talk about?
I just have a game system that I've always kind of been curious about, which is shock social science fiction. So I want to find some people to play that. But yeah, otherwise I feel I'm pretty lucky in that I've gotten to play a whole lot of different games
Hmm.
that I've wanted to over the years. So
Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
fair.
and I would just say that I think uh, there is one, as far as I know, like I don't think there's any game out there that does exactly what I want. So I've been writing my own game.
That's where
Uh,
it
so
starts.
I think
That's where it
that's the
starts.
other approach to this, right? Is like, well, how could I do this? I guess I'll have to make it up, myself to make it happen.
100%. That's where Hearts of Wulin comes from, wanting to play that. So yeah, as Agatha says, that's the curse.
So I do want to do uh, a kind of a I'm really interested in trade and sort of figuring out trade routes among a bunch of different locations that all have different things available, at different prices and so on. And there are some games that address that kind of thing, but I don't know. I just want a certain level of detail
Of
in there, and
granularity. Yes.
yeah, and a lot of games just abstract it to some degree, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like what I want is a little bit too specific, and maybe not really even not appealing or not possible to do like on a you know at an in-person like real-time game without like a computer figuring it out,
Oh yeah.
so maybe it's more of a video game. I don't know.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, cool.
Agatha
I didn't realize
mentioned,
that.
yeah, Ultraviolet Grasslands
Yeah.
had some of
I'll have to
that.
take a look. I didn't realize that had that kind of thing as well. So
I I have the same kind of thing. I've always wanted to do a Atelier game, like Atelier
mm,
Ryza or something. But every time I think about it, it would require like too much granularity and too much detail to do. So that's another white whale. I tried to do it once and I built a bunch of pieces for it years and years ago, and it was just too much. And I was like, why you should just be doing it on the computer. Well, why are we trying to do it this way? Yeah.
yeah. So sketched out, some mechanics that I think are abstract enough that they could work at the
Hmm.
table, but still kind of capture that idea of like, here's all the different locations and like it's on you to figure it out. But the other aspect is there was this uh browser game called Down the Phoenix Road, um that it's like a post-apocalyptic um situation, and so you're kind of exploring the map. It's like, okay, we've been cut off for a long time, and now we're kind of getting desperate, and so we have to head out and reconnect with all these different communities, and so that we can start trading, but there's no money anymore, so it's all about reputation. So you, rather than making money for yourself, right, you build up reputation by satisfying the needs of these different towns, and then they're more willing to give you things that you can take to other places and build up your reputation there and so on. So you kind of build this network of trust rather than just trading for your own personal enrichment, right? So that's kind of it's like a sort of a hopeful angle to post-apocalypse of we can rebuild, and reconnect these communities. And so that's the other side of it. And I want to be able to, there's like, I'm not quite sure how to do that, how to capture like community versus, if we have multiple players playing individual characters, right? It's kind of like how much do we focus on these individual characters and what they're up to versus the like broader themes. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
so maybe what I want is more of a framework that can then be applied on, while you're playing these other games, right? Like, okay, you can be playing, Blades in the Dark, but also connecting with these other crews that also need various things done, right? And this is like a framework on top of whatever else you're doing. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think Andish says in the chat, Legacy, which has kind of two different levels of play there, is a good
Yes.
model. As you said, Force in the Dark with the downtime, I think there's some real fertile ground there
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
building in that way. Neil, do you have anything you want to throw to the table?
I think my big white whale is getting drawn to these lore heavy settings and then feeling like once I get a campaign started, it fizzles out. My last attempt was running a Scarred Lands campaign, which is an old D&D 3 setting,
Mm-hmm.
using the, oh God, I'm drawing a blank on the Cypher System God rules. But basically all the characters were demigods on the make. And it just, we were running a third edition dungeon crawl kind of thing through some of it, and it just felt like all the interest kind of fell out of it, you know? And I've got these other things that I'm like really attracted to, these really lore heavy settings, and I'm like, what am I doing to myself?
Hmm.
I'm over planning these campaigns. I've got to start aiming at shorter stuff. Like right now I've got I'm doing an alternate timeline of the Lone Wolf books where the characters have been thrown back in time and are having to basically Lone Wolf got killed, so now they're going to have to step in and play through the events, but already having known how it turned out the first time around.
Hmm.
We're only through the first book and they've already skewed the timeline to the left. So I was like, what am I doing to myself? This one's at least a little bit more episodic, I think, so it feels a little bit more manageable. But I'm trying to go for stuff where the group is doing a little bit more world building too.
Mm-hmm.
We grabbed Judd Carlman's Mage War era skyships, and we're doing it's Into the Odd framework, but I again hacked it over to Cypher because there was a bunch of like rules missing for like how to do skyship combat. So I was like, that's gonna happen. So I don't want to have to make it up. But with multiple GMs in the group, we're really good at world building. So
Absolutely. it is a real challenge. If you love bits of the lore, but you want to give players a chance to build on it.
right. I think the challenge for me is finding what's going to fit for the group and work with them, and you don't want to like put a stranglehold on, or have them get bored or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my white whale, is finding things that really sing at the table. When stuff can work in a one shot really well, but then you bring it back to the table and it's like, oh yeah, this this isn't working the same way. What am I doing wrong? Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I do love the idea, kind of, because I've been watching a lot of this in various anime and manga, of characters that go back, they know what's happened, and now they've got to do it again to fix it. Seventh time loop, and various sort of isekai style things. I think that's a great concept. But again, that is one of those cases where you have to have the players kind of understand the setting in that way.
Yeah. My caveat with that one has been your characters know what happened. If as players you don't know, I will tell you.
Okay.
And I'm trying to spoon feed them a lore a little bit at a time, like as it's appropriate. Because otherwise, there's 30 some odd books in that series. It's too bloody much. So we'll stick to what's relevant for the current, the current little chunk of it. And I think that's the nice thing about it is episodic. I can kind of whack it up into here's the current thing you need to accomplish.
I've got a couple others I'm going to talk about, and then I want to throw again out to people who've already spoken, because I got a list here, dumb list. I've mentioned before on various podcasts I want to do Mountain Home, but for Ars Magica, essentially where you're building a covenant instead of building a dwarven home. I've talked before about Action Cards, which is a game I played face to face. That is, everybody has a character deck, and I've tried to use tools to do that, but it's really difficult because of the way that the cards are managed in that particular game. But it is a game I loved. But a couple of ones that I think I kind of keep coming back to, and it's a little bit what was spoken about with Burning Empires before. I've been thinking about how you would do Legacy, Life Among the Ruins, or Free from the Yoke, to do space opera, to do like Dune or Fading Suns or things like that. And building on one of my favorite things that's in Legacy Life Among the Ruins is that you get to define the world through building that. So, like if you decide to do the noble house, you get to say what nobles are like. If you decide the church house, you get to say what the church is like, and those kinds of things. And I want to do that, which is a lot of work. Is a lot of work, and then figuring out how to manage the map. Do I start with the star map with lines, or do we leave it entirely blank? Like there are a bunch of structural things there that I'm thinking about. I think it's a great idea. Like I know it's a great idea, but I also know it is a metric ton of work to do that. I definitely want to do that. The other thing I'll mention is I really want to figure out. We've seen this kind of game I'm about to talk about in other things, but I want to figure out how to do it in a slightly different way. We've seen games like Die that have characters coming and they were there in this place in the past and now they're in this thing, or public access where you go back and there's a past history that your characters had. I want to see a game where you play out both sides, like it's it, and you're playing out the kid's side and you're also playing out the adult side, maybe in different sessions, and one impacts the other, where what the kids do, we get a concrete effect in the real world. Or if we're playing like a Narnia thing and they've returned to Narnia, we're playing out the Narnia thing, and then we get to see how that's twisted in the future. It's a logistics campaign thing that I've been thinking about. Donna, tell me about Two Summers.
Yeah, Two Summers is a game by Colin Martin, which does that. You play all the characters as teenagers, and then you play the same characters 20 years later, and you bounce back and forth between those two timelines. You kind of have an idea of what happened in that original summer and why you're getting back together 20 years later, but you don't know till you really play it out exactly why. And so it is that thing, every time you switch timelines, you have a better idea of what's going on. And it's like drawing a picture from two different sides
Oh,
and eventually
wow.
meeting in the middle. And so to talk about this white whale issue, I plonked this into our Silent Falls continuity. And so not just were we playing with this two different sets of timelines, but there was stuff after and before it, which was also happening, which we again can kind of ignore mostly because it's not happening right now. Yeah, it's a very interesting way to do it. I think you've got to have a very light hand on the tiller.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to color in one timeline too much. You don't want to paint yourself into a corner in the other one. So, swap back and forth whenever makes the most sense. And it's a really great way to drop a cliffhanger, right? You're in there as kids, you come into a dangerous situation or whatever it is, and you just like, let's swap to the adult timeline. And talk
That
about how
kind of reminds
traumatized
me
you
of
are 20 years later.
there was a CW show Arrow. In season 1, 10 minutes of every episode was 5 years ago. And as you say, it was kind of painting the picture of what happened and how they got the skill set and who's on whose side, and that was the twin campaign being painted over the whole season.
I love it. Other inadvisable ideas, white whales, folks want to talk about? Things you want to
Wait,
mention?
Lil, I have a clarifying question. Is that
Absolutely.
what you were looking for in that? Is like the ability to play as adults of the same character and the childhood at the same
Yeah, I
time?
think so. I think I would want you to play them and us like there be a real concrete, we meet characters here and then they appear in our adult game kind of thing, and we see how we've changed in there. Maybe we learn, we backfill why our characters kind of like this now, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And like playing it simultaneously is
Yeah.
what you mean.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I did Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood, where we did the kids campaign and then they aged up a few years. And we did the later campaign, and that was dynamite. Like that was dynamite because you went from kids who were like slightly like middle school into high school, and how that changed them, and them having to work out why they were like had different relations to one another in between. And I think that's fun, but I would like to do the swap back and forth in a concrete way.
So I haven't played this, but there was a fascinating LARP I heard about at some point on a podcast, and it was like a Love Island kind of LARP. And what it did
Okay.
was you acted out, the scene that you see in the TV show, and then that would cut, and then you would act out what really happened before they had edited anything. And I found that's always been stuck in the back of my brain of that's a fascinating way to have that kind of flashback and see what the reality of things are. And the reason I bring that up is what you were describing is, you can discuss things as adults and then have a flashback to kids and see what really happened when you were a kid. It's just a super fascinating idea that I really like.
Other folks have other things. Yeah, Mike?
Well, I just want to make a comment on that because it brings to mind another white whale that had slipped my grasp and maybe is now coming back into focus. Maybe it's back on the horizon. At one point, I had considered trying to run a game that was structured episodically, somewhat like a Lost episode, where we had one character be sort of the spotlight character for that session, and they and only they could call for flashbacks that would give them some kind of mechanical benefit. And then you would just change who is the spotlight character from session to session. So as you play out over a campaign, a quarter, you would get some kind of character progression for each of those characters and see sort of why they are the way that they are.
Oh, that's a really, really interesting idea.
The only flaw I think would be is someone didn't rock up and it was like their turn. Yeah, it can really stall the whole campaign. But outside of that, it's a great idea. I love the idea.
Yeah.
And that actually brings to mind one of my white whales, which is Primetime Adventures. I've only played one shots of that, which was kind of blockbuster adventures. And you're exactly right. Like, if you can't get the scheduling to work exactly right, someone shows up, it's supposed to be their spotlight session, it's an issue. But yeah.
Anything else anybody wants to throw to the table on this?
You just reminded me
Yeah.
of the whole kids is not really a white whale, but I've started Slug Blaster 2 different times, and we got through one run, and then the game fell apart before we did the actual like downtime, like the go home and you play out your beats stuff, and that's the stuff I want to see now. So somebody run Slug Blaster for me, please.
Get Mark Major, hit him up again on that. I know he loves Slug Blaster. Yeah.
I was just going to call back to lol the idea of a Space Legacy game because I really want to play that, and so I want you to have ideas for it.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of the zooming kind of setting creation that comes from Starforged would be useful there, where you kind of define in very broad strokes like 3 planets or 3 locations that you can go to, and you don't know anything else about them until you go there. And when you get there, there's kind of setting creation mechanics that help you to flesh out what are the biomes like, and then when you land, what are the locations I'm going to, and what are they like, if that would be helpful for something like that, so you don't have to front load all of those mechanics so much.
I think also you're pointing at another thing that would be interesting is to have a truths table. It's one of the things I like about Starforged and Sundered Isles and stuff, that truths table with options, and then if a player doesn't take something that kind of defines that truth, then the group kind of builds it together as one, and having a table for that might be neat. Donna?
Yeah, I mean, people have mentioned a few of these, platinum level campaigns like Enemy Within or Darkening Mirkwood. And there's a few more that are kind of on my list. One would be Harlem Unbound. Which looks amazing. And then my thought process is, what system do I use for that is not Cthulhu? Do I play it with like Cthulhu Dark to be really simple, or like Locus, which is a kind of a horror game that came out a couple of years ago that I quite like the look of. The other one that is kind of that I've abandoned really was the old Cyberpunk Janus Games campaign adventure thing called Subnautica, which I know we've talked about before. I wanted to run it, but not with Cyberpunk. And yeah, I think the vibe that I envisaged just didn't land well enough. So yeah, that's kind of in my back mirror now, but still kind of every so often it'll bubble up and say
Mhm.
you should run me.
Agatha?
I have one that's like another like setting or not setting vibe tone that I often want out of a game, or I want to experience, play, or run is like a game in a setting where there is a lot of oppression and have the oppression actually hit. Like, and I feel like that's a very tricky balance to find in a tabletop role-playing game because, of course, like it's not the same as just telling a story like in a movie or a novel where, you know, the characters can get oppressed as much and suffer as much as feels appropriate to the story, and you're just kind of like, you know, engaging in it. Whereas, like, you know, when there are players, the players don't want to feel bad all the time, question mark.
Mhm.
And so like the power level of characters is often just a lot. And then there's also a lot of like default assumptions that players go into a game with about what they might want to do or what they can do that like I feel like it's hard to manage like probably as a GM where you're like I want you to have fun but like so I don't want to keep saying no to things but it's also like the consequences like there's so many games like most games have settings where they're like oh there's like there are oppressive systems at work but they almost never come to bear in the games that I have played and I'm like so this is like wallpaper. This is a
Mhm.
term that people use in historical romance novels where it's like oh the setting is just wallpaper. It's just there like set dressing, but it's not actually anything. And I again I understand why. And so and I don't mind it most of the time because you know I also want to feel empowered when I play games. I want to have fun, but like sometimes I'm just like, but what if oppression? So
Doesn't Night Witches go into that a bit?
Night Witches does,
Yeah.
yes.
I'll say another one that I think like you can, if you're willing to run it the way that the book writes it up and lean into it, I think hashtag I hunt is it the oppression there is poverty. And it is about the system continually keeping you in poverty and forcing you into the gig economy and so on. And if the GM's willing to lean into that, I think, and the book really does stress that really strongly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like the ideal for me is if there is an oppressive system and then like and then the character can still try to break it, but it's
Hmm.
just very, very hard and very, very costly. That's like I'm like, ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Red Markets is one that does economic horror as well, but you can't break the system like you're like,
Yes, and
yeah.
that's the other thing is that I think like almost all horror games do that, right? Like on a mechanics level, but that's also like not the tone of a lot of the pitches of the games that I that I wanted to play, but with the pitch.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if I'm making sense. Yeah, because where
I
it's
think
like, oh, things are hard, but we can do something about it. And it's like, yes, but I want it to be so hard and to hurt.
the one time I was, I think, able to do this even slightly fruitfully was Narwhal. The I'm forgetting the designer's name, but yeah, it is again economic like oppression. Like primarily, it's like this idea of like just like struggling to make a living. And the reason I think it worked there was because the game understood that to do that, you need a release valve. And so that game is also really about like fine, like it's a very joyful game. like it's a game where the characters are like having a lot of like fun in the spaces of that system, right? So they are like, they like they make some money and then they have to like they'll throw a party with it and then they won't have any money anymore. And then so you kind of do like, and I think you do need that if you want a more sustained experience, right? Like I think a lot of horror games manage to capture it in the one shot kind of space. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time with the novel.
I will say it's also a game I think requires, like, let's be honest, I'm not the person to run that kind of thing. Like I ran Mutants in the Night, which is a really interesting game about, mutants being isolated, and it's a metaphor for race and culture and things like that. And I didn't do a great job with it. Like I did not. I had a player that was like, hey, it looks like you're pointing us back kind of as at the some of the structures here are our own people rather than external and stuff. And I wasn't catching it. I was echoing old themes, and I think it's very easy to fall into that. I don't know how you it's a real challenge. But I do love it. Like I do love the idea of that suffering in a way to make that actual turnaround satisfying. Like it's monumentally right at that point.
I think dog eat dog, although with the caveat that it it's sort of playing with the players a little bit at a meta level, because
Yeah.
the first thing you do is have you discuss in real life, okay, which of the players, what's the players like income levels, and then whoever has the highest income plays the oppressors. And so Lowell, you would potentially have strong guidance there of like, no, you're going to be the oppressor, and like here's how it works, right? And you have very strict rules that you follow. And then the only downside though is that there is no real way to overcome
Yeah.
the oppressive system there. So you can fight against it, right? But it's you're not going to change it.
Just a side note, right now, even as we're recording, there's a Kickstarter for Dog Eat Dog and a couple of other games going on through one of the university presses. Just as a side note. I have other things on my list. Hearts of Wulin Shonen with a tournament arc is another one. Doing a set of tools for doing superhero patrols. I got a bunch of stuff, but we've talked for about 75 minutes here. I appreciate everyone's input and feedback and suggestions. And a lot of these ideas, I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do that. Definitely want to. So I want to thank everybody for coming in and joining us today on this chat. And I hope you have a great rest of your shared hearth experience. And I am going to stop the recording.